Did you know, from one indigenous community perspective, one man having children with multiple women, and two or more of those women are choosing to not have an intimate sexual relationship with that man, they could still be considered his spouse, and they may also be in another relationship, building a foundation of marriage with another man in their community. And this could be looked at from a Westerner perspective who is new to polygamous family structures, as this is polygyny, but really this is a form of polyamory. My name is Asha Sekhmet, and I am a tantra practitioner, oracle, thought leader, and my purpose is in building a sovereign community, which is the Maji Community. We practice functional polyamory and an indigenous way of life to become closer to the creator without strict religious doctrine. We practice sovereignty and tribalism. So I want to have this much needed conversation because this matters, right? So I feel like a broken record, right? As we are looking at what this is in terms of multiple different types of polygamous dynamics or marital systems. Okay, so we are in a modern world. This means that we're not going back in time. Okay, so what was once looked at as someone could look and perceive as polygyny could have really been a form of polyamory if you went deeper into that indigenous tribes family dynamics. So now that we have this understanding, let's talk about modern times, right? So this is very important because I noticed this in my content where people say, are you talking about polygyny? Are you talking, or like what type of polygamy, right? This is very important. I understand the need for clarity, right? However, clarity is not going to come from English definitions on different polygamous marriage types, right? That's not going to give us clarity exactly to what it is, right? So we'll look at basic definitions, right? Because someone could say, oh, when you say polygamy, that's broad. Well, not necessarily. Group marriages are what they are, right? So either monogamy, or now we're indulging into a new realm of communication in polygamous marital systems, which is very advanced, and it's an entire language, right? So let's talk about this concept right here. So based on my initiations and my understanding, I went through a 7-year initiation in indigenous ways of life, right? That doesn't mean that all indigenous communities have the same type of understanding of their polygamous marital systems, okay? I am speaking from my initiations, and also what gets brought to me from spirit, as much as I am being called and led to do. Now, I used to think this way, right? When I first got into learning polygyny, reading We Want for Our Sisters What We Want for Ourselves, right? When I started to read this information, again, this is modern Western world civilization taking ancient indigenous practices into the new world, which they're not going to look the same, right? Okay, that's an understanding there. So a man, right? We talk about a man who is married, a man who has children by multiple women. Okay. Now, Let's say that this man remarries a woman, and she's pregnant, right? He remarries a woman, and he is now with that woman, and maybe through some time he's working it out with one of his children's mother. And both of them at some point chooses to be just with him, right? Throughout time, they choose to just be with him exclusively, and they're making this work. This would not technically be a form of polygyny. This would be polyamory. Why? Because this man still shares 2 other women, and let's say that they choose to have a harmonious type of relationship, but they don't want an intimate relationship with him, and he doesn't want that. That doesn't work. But let's say that they are friends, and they are having their children come around this dynamic, but they're not choosing to be in an intimate relationship with the man. This would be a form of polyamory, because now these 2 women, they may choose to be in an intimate relationship with other men in their community, but they're still working with their children's father to have multiple parental figures for their children, and also be in a loving relationship so that the children are growing up in a village. But there's multiple parental figures, right? Those children now have 2 additional mothers. Now the husband is present, but the other 2 children's mother are not intimately having sex with that man anymore. This, like I said, would be looked at as polyamory. So polyamory is having multiple intimate relationships, right? It doesn't necessarily specify like what does that mean, right? In terms of intimacy, it doesn't specify that, right? But now, what is a situation where it would be just polygyny? Well, this would mean that the women that's with the man, they have children with the man, and they were only with that man exclusively. That would be technically polygyny. But if we look at the dynamics that we find ourselves in Black American communities today, it's not quite polygyny, right? And also we have to account for reality, right? Like, meaning we evolve, right? As human beings, we evolve. So we see this all the time. Like, a woman has children with a man has children with women, and sometimes it's just not a good fit for that man to be with all of his children's mother. That would be great. That would be an ideal, perfect world. But we don't live in an ideal, perfect world. Why? Because this world is not meant for us to be perfect. We're meant to be very imperfect, to seek becoming better and better and more refined versions of ourselves until we die, right? So that's not polygyny, right? So when we look at what we have today, this concept of, if a woman has children by another man and she remarries, she's practicing polyamory, even though she's exclusive to that man, right? Because the best case scenario is that her child still has a relationship with their biological father, and we're all building collective resources together, and we're putting function behind the form of what it means it takes a village to raise a child, right? So the child is having multiple parental figures, even if that woman is not having intimate sexual relationships with each of those men, right? Meaning the man that she's actually with and her child's father, right? But this is very important that we talk about like these conversations, because this is how we get into functional polyamory, right? So now people will say, well, what are the borders in that, right? Because that would be too much chaos, right? And I totally agree, and I definitely get that. Find your community. That's what that means. That means that, yes, you shouldn't be doing that as an isolated family, because the chances of that being successful will not be likely, because the whole point of having a polygamous lifestyle is to build a community. So when you have a community and a group of people based on shared values, a faith-based system that they're utilizing as a vehicle, as a ship to become one with the Creator, then that's how you're able to get into a community committee, and you can agree upon the type of restrictions, a code of ethics, let's see, a constitution of how you want the parameters around your polygamous marital system to go. Okay, so I just hope that brings more clarity, because I understand the times that we're in, right? I saw a video and I posted this because I thought it was very real, right? The video was it was just talking about how in this day and time, like basically modern men have to adapt to the new world of female empowerment and this wave of female evolution as well. Like men have to adapt to that when it comes to marriage, relationships, and community building, right? Because we're not going back in time. So even though we have the concept of Sankofa, right? So we have this ancient practice that's coming back. We're going back to indigenous ways, but it's being refined to a new world. So that's going to have some chaos in it as you restore order. And one of my comments to this video was that, yes, right, we live in a world that is upside down and backwards. So it's going to take us to probably do things outside of what would traditionally be seen as natural for us to get back to natural and restore order, right? So if we're talking about in this day and time where Black Americans are today, functional polyamory is a solution, right, to where we could be. So I understand, yes, polygyny, yes, right, you pair up with men. Functional polyamory would be a next step to that, right? So that you all see that in my natural evolution. So husband sharing, okay, there is some concept of wife sharing in the community, okay, and this is my community, okay. We don't practice a religious form of polygamy, okay, so I don't speak for those communities, but definitely for spiritual communities, for a spiritual way of life, that's pretty much what it's going to be. So polygyny, functional polyamory, and this is how we start to really tap into what is truly group collective consciousness. Okay, so for everyone to elevate. Now, I hope this clarified a little bit of some of what my information is and what I am talking about, because I started with what I thought was polygyny, and you all have seen my evolution through that. In my second marriage, in my first marriage, I practiced polygyny, and I practiced more of a Christian religious monogamous relationship. So the steps literally went from Christian monogamous relationship to righteous polygyny to now functional polyamory in my marriage with my husband. And I had to come into that because my husband had children by other women outside of me when I came into the marriage. So that means that we're practicing polyamory. We practiced that coming into it. And there's no way I could have been, with my husband if I had not had a polyamorous mindset and had the experience that I've had in husband sharing. Okay, so this is very important for the day and times that we live in, because it's just so human, like that we want to cling on to words, but these are not communities. These are not communities. It's to say, it's like, okay, let's be precise. Is this polygyny part? The Maji community. We're practicing functional polyamory, and maybe in 1,000 years, if Maji community will still be here, they will be practicing a righteous form of a different type of polygamy. I don't know. Okay, so that's the embracing the unknown factor of community building in the times that we live in. We're creating a new world. Okay, so I just wanted to shed light on this. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Feel free to share and chime into this conversation, which is a much needed conversation. Okay, the other thing that I want to state is that depending on your community, you have to also define spouse, right? Because let's say if I posted a video and I'm talking about a woman that is not technically in a polygamous consciousness for a black woman, she's just trying to compete with other black women, and she's using that as a guise and saying that she's poly, but she really is still in competition with her sisters, but she could be using that because she want to stay in access with a particular type of black man for, entertainment, lifestyle, and all this other stuff that I talked about. So I was referring to the fact that, like, if someone says, well, are you referring to polygyny? Well, is that woman a wife? I mean, like, these are the type of questions that we need to ask. So in my community, let's just go with my community. And in my community, you're not a wife just because you birth a child, for instance. Like reproduction. Reproduction doesn't make you a wife or a husband, right? So responsibility does, okay? And we have formal trainings for that, right? It is very advanced, right? So we have trainings on what it means to be a wife, right? Completing womanhood development. We have initiations for men to complete manhood development, right? I don't spearhead that, but I have the blueprint for it. And then a man can take it and do with it. So, it's really about us coming together though, right? In a community. So in my community, I can consult, I can, and especially like, and I'm just kidding, like for the men, I'm just saying that because I'm not a man, but I can of course give the instructions and the blueprint, right? And I can be there as a resource and as support as needed. So that's all I'm saying. But we do have formal wifehood trainings though, that I walk the women through. And then, we teach tantra, right? Because we have female healers in our community, right? So that would make sense that in my particular community, we practice polyamory, right? Because we practice tantra. Okay. And we have classes and we come together so that we are working towards our collective sovereignty, right? Because that's what it's ultimately about. We are seeking something greater, right? We're seeking evolution, enlightenment, growth, evolvement, all right? And definitely a beautiful and blissful life. So I hope this clarifies some things. These kind of things will help define the language. So this is why when I'm talking, people may ask these different questions. My community does not represent polygyny, polygamy, these kind of terms. It's a spiritual community, right? It's just a marital practice that we use is functional polyamory, okay? But that could always change. Just depends on the community. And when I mean change, I'm not saying based on a day-to-day, I mean within a lifetime, right? Within the next 50 years, we may adapt more other types of polygamous marital systems along with it. I don't know, right? So I'm just saying, don't cling on to the terms, guys. Just find a community, okay? Just find a community. It's not about polygamy. It's not about one person getting multiple spouses. That would be like a child, like reading polygamy as a definition, like reading it off. That's not That's not what it is, right? It's about building collective resources, right? Polygamy is about community needs over individual needs. And it's about the children, right? It's about putting the best scenarios in place for the children's development and growth, because we know it takes a village to raise a child. And it's about culture, right? It's about spirituality, right? Each individual growing in the polygamous dynamics. And this is why I said that people evolve over time. And this is why it can get dangerous to just say and hold and cling on to this word for dear life, polygyny. It can get really dangerous, because what makes my community different with the Maji community is that we don't have a closed off, like, non-allowance for women developing a relationship with another man in the community if it evolved into that, right? In a safe, structural way. So that's really what distinguishes us, right? Versus if you were maybe in a different type of religious, I'm pretty sure, like in Islam, women are not allowed to have other other husbands, or that is not allowed, right? So that is what would make us different, right? Because that's what it is. So we do not have, like, women are not allowed in the Maji community. We don't have that, right? Me personally, Asha Sekhmet, I do believe in women's freedom of choice. I believe in women's freedom of choice. That does not mean we are siding with women's individual desires. No, ain't wrong, right? Because our women go through a initiation process where they're naturally developing themselves in their womanhood, right? But it's to say, for instance, like if I know a sister who did polygyny the righteous way, like she was Muslim before, and I know this sister in real life, she was Muslim before in her earlier adulthood years, and now she's in her 40s, and she has ascended out of that. She was a Muslim before. She practiced polygamy. The wives were in different compounds, and she has children. So she did polygyny the righteous way. Okay. And now she's where she is today. And that type of woman, I know her heart, like me and her have heart to heart. She's a really good sister. Okay. And so she's building up resources. So she has, men in her vicinity that she's working with on a business level. Okay, so that makes sense. Like, and in my community, I would not deny a sister access to that if she went through a righteous way and she was deserving and then that made sense also for the community, for her to do that and to pair up with a man, and that made sense for the community, that they would be, that relationship and them coming together and pulling resources would pour back into the community and helping it elevate. So this just clarify, right? Like, it takes an adult and conscious mind to really pick up what I'm putting down in a lot of my content. Okay, so let me know what y'all think. If you have any questions, let me know. I have, sister wife coaching. We have tantra trainings, femininity coaching for sisters who, if you need help just with your femininity, you see where we are, what we're doing, but you're like, okay, I'm single, or I could be married, but I need to work on my femininity. Like, maybe I'm just not there. I got femininity coaching for you. All right. For men, we have spiritual guidance, men's spiritual guidance. I do divinations. Get your divination purpose reading to know what your soul's purpose is. Let's see. And then just tap in with me. We have polyamory consultations as well. Okay, and then you can get a divination also, and if you are looking to become a part of the community, I can give you the natural calendar cycle that we use, and I can give you a yearly cycle based on your birthday. Okay, so just let me know if you have any questions. And also tantra. I do tantra for men as well. It can be done virtually. So you can book the virtual one. Okay, for in person, I am located in North Carolina. However, it doesn't require you to be in person for a man to get tantra done, because it's energy work. So space doesn't exist, right? This is why I can talk to someone on the phone, a family member on the phone who is in Michigan, and I can still feel their heart and soul and energy as if they're just still sitting here with me, right? Because there's no space that exists in the realm of energy, right? So I could do tantra work, and it's just as beneficial as it is in person. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video.